Our first talk is going to be the customer is the product, how making the customer king will bring you the bling. And we're going to kick it off with Ranjith, who's the founder and CEO of PunchTab.
Thanks. Do I need the mic? No, I'm good. All right.
Got a mic.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thanks for staying awake after lunch to listen to the talk. Really, what I just want to do is count to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. But I'm going to go real quick through this. There's a lot of new material here, and I tend to put too much stuff in. So this topic's customers, culture, and cash. How I built my second startup to be extremely customer-focused. And I'll start with a quick survey. How many of you, if you're at companies right now or if you're at startups, ABCD, how many of your employees talk to customers every day? Do you think it's 0 to 5%? Anyone? Okay. 5 to 20%? Okay, that's good. That's usually kind of where I see the numbers fall. How about 20 to 50%? Anybody? That's good. You're doing great. And then finally, 50 to 100%. That's great. My philosophy of starting my second company was to try and get 80 to 90% of people talking to customers every day, regardless of how big we got. It's a work in progress, but I'll tell you a little bit about kind of how I came up with that and how we measure it and how we implement it. I've started 2 companies. The company formerly known as unSEXY, Hightail. It's an enterprise collaboration, business collaboration system. Started that with a couple co-founders about 8 years ago. I'm still on the board, 9 years ago, if I do the math right. And I'm still on the board, so I get to see kind of how that company's evolved over time, some of the lessons learned there. And then PunchTab is my second company. It's a rewards and incentives platform used primarily by CPG and retail brands to kind of reboot their loyalty systems. And we've been doing that for about 2.5, almost 3, going on 3 years now. And we took different approaches to customer service for both companies. And the first one is a familiar model. You've all been there if you started a company. Before funding, you're answering every email. You're picking up every phone call. People come to your house and ask your wife for customer service. It's a true story. And everyone pitches in. But once you start scaling, you transition, you've got a little bling, a little money in the bank, you start to hire customer service specialists, and it's a familiar model. And we did this fairly successfully at unSEXY. We invested heavily in customer feedbacks and success and other programs, and we measured it using Net Promoter Score. And we do pretty well there. Our Net Promoter Score is well into the 80s. It's a little bit higher than Apple, which is a good place to be. And the movie reference here is a buddy of mine did a documentary called Bombay Calling. It's about call centers in India. Strangely enough, our first support center was in Mumbai. My first experience helping those guys out was I called a customer on the phone before emailed them, called them, and said, "Hey, this is Ranjith from unSEXY calling," and his response was, "Well, you don't sound like a Ranjith." And I was like, "Yeah, I grew up in Canada. Some people say I should sound funny, but I don't." But so that's just a quick anecdote. So the trouble with this model, I find, is that as well as we did at unSEXY and continue to invest in it, if you don't do the right things, there's often a big disconnect from kind of what the front line is seeing to what the people building the product, selling the product, packaging the product are doing. So this is how dreams are shattered. I recently sent an email to a high-flying, well-known startup. I almost threw them under the bus after this, but I just put a bus on there. And the only clue I'll give you is it's a 5-letter domain name, well-known startup. And I reported a bug. I was doing my thing, can't help myself. I said, "Hey, this is broken. You should check it out." And I got this email back pretty quickly. That's good, but it read, "Thanks for writing in. You're right in reporting this, so thanks so much for doing so. I have let the bugs team know about this. The bugs team is responsible for responding to bugs, inconsistencies on the product. In future, please feel free to email bugs@5letterdomain.com." And I was crushed. I thought, here's a great startup, highly capitalized, can do no wrong, and this just shattered the image of the quality of the company for me. And it'll never be the same again. And this is what happens if you don't invest in people, in the right processes, in really connecting the people that are on the front line with how you're building product, what your company culture is like, and what really matters to the consumer. And I really don't mean to pick on this 5-letter domain name company, but it really made a profound difference in how at least I perceived this company. It may be a Silicon Valley echo chamber thing, but I was curled up in the fetal position after this. A different approach is I started toying with a different approach to building the second company, and it started pretty much the same: pre-funding, pre-revenue. Everyone, founders, the one developer, the one designer that we had, we all did email support, chat support. Nobody was really calling us then, so if the phone rang, it was usually someone trying to sell us something, but we'd answer the phone. And post-funding, we decided to do the same, where we've got, 40 enterprise customers now. We reached 2.5 million loyalty members across those programs that we power. We power 16,000 programs across the long-tail web, and we don't have a single customer support head. When you're an employee of PunchTab, you must, every day, either be logged into live chat when you're online, be in the email system, or answer the phone when it rings. And it really makes a difference. And I'll dive into it. The way I came up with this idea and why I thought it was so important was one fateful Diwali in Usendit history. A chunk of the offshore support team decided to spend time with their families, and we were short-staffed that day. And instead of picking on people to say, hey, you got to wake up early and do the graveyard shift of email chat support, phone support, I just put a note around. I said, hey, if you're interested in joining the support party, and there was food and there was drinks and everything, come to my queue, write down your name of which shift you want to take, and I'll fill you in on the rest. And amazingly, it filled up within 15 minutes. We were about a 100% company at the time, and maybe 80% company, and it filled up really quickly. 2 people for every shift. And what was remarkable was everyone really enjoyed it. And then at the end, they kept asking me, when are we going to have the next support party? When can we help in again? And over time, I realized that the people that kept signing up for these support parties were the future leaders of the company or the current leaders of the company. These were the heads of, the up-and-coming heads of product development, the engineers you could always count on to be there in the dead of night to solve customer problems. The busiest people in the company, the ones that had the finger on the pulse, that likely could have spent their time anywhere they wanted, were volunteering to do this. And ultimately, they ran the company in one form or another. And I really took that to heart, and I started kind of observing who would show up to these support parties. And that was the philosophy of hiring at PunchTab, is we look for the people that can't help themselves but feel bad when you drop the ball with a customer, that go out of their way, or at least take the time to respond, aren't afraid to get in front of customers in times of crisis or opportunity. They all do sales calls. They all do service and writing and blogging. So that was kind of the big takeaway. And yes, we did party like it was your birthday at the support parties. So some obvious learnings on this I'll go through. There's a lot of the product market fit acceleration stuff that we talk about. Enough said. You've beaten that to death. But if you're not familiar with it, go check out this particular book. Check out the chapter on MVPs. They interview me, so it's awesome. But other things that are a little bit more subtle that sometimes your support people get wind of that takes a long time to trickle through is markets are changing super fast. If I think even earlier this year, our business was primarily building incentivized communities for duct tape and Purell and soap vendors and things like that. It was all online, but very quickly they started asking about point of sale and in-store mobile applications, and that really shaped the strategic direction of the company. And now we're closing super large strategic deals with Yankee Candle Company and other retailers where we're going all the way to the point of sale and in-store. And I don't think it would have happened as quickly if I look at the product roadmap plan. Earlier this year, we're way ahead of where we were supposed to be, and that was primarily because the people building the products were talking to customers that were asking for this stuff and just said, we should be throwing out all this stuff nobody cares about and building what they want. And they were able to do that themselves. There was no middleman. There was no chain of command to go through. We also don't have product managers. Every engineers are grouped to run their own products as well. So we have very few layers in between the customer and the people implementing, the people selling. So those are some. And the last thing is not everyone lives in Silicon Valley, so they don't really care about the latest and greatest technology or design principle. They want stuff that's easy to use, simple, works. These are busy people that we sell to that have real metrics to hit. And when you hear that every single day, you take it to heart and you build products different ways. So those are a variety of reasons that we like this model. More subtle, however, comes in some of the other learnings that are not as obvious if you're not on the front line every day. Customers and certain partners really hate your competitors. I can't count the number of times when we show up and we roll out the red carpet and we take the time to have the founders, the architects, the lead designers interface with the team there that they said, we really hate the vendor that we're working with right now, and as soon as we can, companies as big as Microsoft to as small as startups have swapped people out and dropped us in just because they got to know us. Partnerships the same. We have lots of agency partners that have been burned by the more recognizable names in our category just because they don't spend the time post sales to nurture that relationship. Counterintuitively, you'll ship product faster when you're constantly interrupted by customers. And I alluded to this earlier, where if you're working on the wrong thing and you wait 6 weeks to hear from the customer that you're working on the wrong thing, you've wasted 6 weeks. If you wake up the next day and happen to strike up a conversation with someone that's interested in what you're working on as part of a support request or an inbound call, they'll tell you right away. And you'll hear that multiple times a day. And so you actually end up scrapping products much earlier, and the mortality rate is high because if you're in an insular kind of office environment, if you don't hear from customers firsthand, you're less likely to go, well, they don't really know what you're more likely to say they really don't know what they're talking about. If you hear it enough times a day from happy and irate customers, you tend to listen a little bit more. The authenticity factor translates to lifetime value. That's all we measure there. We're an engagement, incentives, and rewards company, so we measure everything on kind of lifetime value. And the authenticity helps. When I pick up the phone, when it rings, I pick up the phone, and it's the founder CEO talking to a design manager or a brand manager at a Fortune 500 company. It makes all the difference from, well, the last phone call I made, they shunted me off to a junior salesperson to kind of set up a demo and figure out what my budget is. And we've won deals that way. We have literally won. I wish I could tell you half the stories, but I'll try only to throw one company under the bus every talk. If you're interested more in this topic, I wrote this article for Forbes called "Why Everyone Should Do Customer Support." Check it out. It's got a lot of interesting it tells this story maybe a little bit more focused manner, but it has a few other anecdotes in it. It also has an interesting commenting thread, which I found fascinating because generally the people that liked the article were people in customer service and were wired the same way. The people that thought it was a little was kind of an immature support model, and as you scale, we're actually the people providing customer support solutions. So there's a guy in there saying, yeah, this works for a startup, but as you scale, you might want to try out our stuff, which automates it, and there's AI behind it, so you don't have to throw as many people on it. I don't think he got the point. So finally, how does this translate into cash money? Your sales process starts well before you know it. So one story I can tell is we were working with a large political organization that most Californians don't vote for a couple of years ago, and we met a lot of political folks through that, and one campaign that wasn't quite ready to roll, we're like, this looks interesting, tell us about it, and it came recommended from this large political party that most Californians don't vote for. So we brought them up to speed, and we didn't hear from them for 10 months. The next time we heard from them was a $20,000 check for a 1-year subscription to it was literally a check. And they were all good to go. We took the time, 10 months early. So your sales cycle starts really early, and it's typically the customer service people and that experience that gets you there. And I think I cut into my forging customer relationships early, do it. And then the upsell, retention, and displacement. There's another good story. The toy fair industry of America is a big customer of ours. They've been probably our oldest customer. We power their website, we power their mobile apps, we power their big events out in New York every year. And the second year they signed on with us, they asked us to do like a bunch of stuff that there was no way we were ever going to be able to deliver on it. And we loved them to death, and they love us. And we just said, look, we're not that company. We don't think we're the right company to power this for you this year. And rather than choosing a different vendor, they actually scaled back their program to make sure it fit within our constraints for what we were doing. And that was also a 20K plus engagement that otherwise we would have lost, I think, if we'd pretended that we were something we weren't. So, and now that we're into the second, third year of the company, we're starting to displace incumbents that have provided terrible customer service, not answering emails after we win just because of those reasons, and we've started to displace some of the competitors very easily. Here's a quick how-to guide. It's not rocket science. Start early. Start today. If you're the founder, if you're the founding team, walk the talk. Answer that phone. Don't be shy. Put the tools in place. They're pretty cheap. For live chat, we use Olark. Your mileage may vary. For email, it's actually user voice, and I think Richard from user voice might be here. But that's what we use. We're a customer. And then phone, it's that thing that you guys know what the phone is. But invest in a phone system and make sure people are there to answer it, at least during business hours of your coast. And finally, walk the talk. It's hard to make things sustainable if you're not really invested in this. This is a quick example. I was flying back from JFK to SFO. I could have goofed off and watched, caught up on Breaking Bad or something like that, but I decided to just put a tweet out saying, hey, I'm on the plane, I've got Wi-Fi, I'm going to do a live chat. If you're a customer or if you're a prospect and interested in the next 3 hours, you can catch me. I'm a captive audience. And I had a few dozen people, log in some of them was just to call me on it and say, is this really you? And I was like, yeah, it's me. And some people, we struck up conversations that ultimately turned into, lead gen. So you really need to walk the talk and really commit to it, and so do all your employees. And that's all I have for today. I think we have 4 minutes for questions. Question over here.
If you have a lot of large customers and sales and support interacting with them on one side and then engineers on the other side, how do you make decisions about priorities on customers and the revenue you might generate?
Yeah, I think we're at an interesting point in the company where the question was if you've got the side that fuels the revenue and the side that fuels the product decisions, how do you make that trade-off? And this is an interesting crossroad that we're at, because until about 6-7 months ago, people weren't buying a lot of stuff from us, so it was pretty much product and kind of testing driven. Now it's definitely customers that are kind of saying it's point of sale that we want next. It's couponing system integration that we want next. In some ways very strategic, in other ways very tactical. And we have found ourselves being guided more by the loud strategic customer voice, and that is something we're looking at. That's why I call it a work in progress. I don't think I have the answer on how to strike that balance yet, but I still believe somewhere in there it's having both sides, the strategic side and the customer-facing side, both be customer-facing every day. We haven't found that balance, but it's a productive team. Right now it's just hustle that lets us do everything we can. We're a 22-person company, so that'll change over time. I'll get back to you. Too many layers in between customer support and product and engineering, and we were pretty lean in that. We had people that were that could work both sides of that road. The question was, I forget to repeat the questions. What did I learn at Hightail? Some of the inefficiencies of having too many people in between customer service and product, and especially the engineers. And I truly believe the engineers can be customer facing and still be productive. Question over here. I know you. She's not a plant.
You were largely talking about your enterprise customers.
Yeah.
I think you guys also serve smaller customers. How do you tier support? And how do you kind of balance?
Not really. Not really. I think we claim to provide tiered support, so email is kind of what the long tail customers. But if they happen to figure out how to get to us on chat, or if they call us on the phone, we answer it. So we're pretty generous with our time that way. On that respect, we kind of look at that as kind of a lot of our older feature set goes to the long tail The enterprise customers have kind of a longer deployment cycle and a little bit more nervous to kind of rock the boat. So we get kind of immediate feedback on, when we added Instagram and Pinterest support, those guys used it right away, and then eventually we transitioned to it. So we do claim to tier it, but if you are clever enough to figure out what numbers to call, that may change over time as well, I think, as we scale. But for now, at the volume we're at.
But the smaller customers can still hear from you.
Yeah, absolutely, all the time. Thanks, Liz. Question?
So I have a restaurant and bar inventory startup, and similar to how you might be in the restaurant business, most of the other solutions that might be in there with technology like point of sale, they tend to charge for support.
Yeah.
How do you feel? Do you think because more B2C solutions are everyone's kind of getting used to free support, do you think that's going to migrate into like the B2B space? Or do you have any opposition to charging for support?
I'm not opposed to charging. So I think sometimes it's almost required. Like, people won't take you seriously unless you have a support structure. I found that out the hard way at USEN as well, until we started charging for support and making people feel like they're getting what they're paying for what they get. They tend to. I think that mentality is still there in B2B broadly, but certainly with things like social media, you can get support over Twitter. We see that all the time as well. I think we're out of time, so I'd love to chat with you all. I'll hang out for a little bit. I got to go to a wedding, though, after, so I got to go at like 2. Thanks, everyone.